What's going on, everybody? It's Childish back at it again, coming at you with part 3 of our Summoner Gear series. Once again, TopherSmurf is back here in the mix, getting it done. We're looking to provide you guys everything and anything you need to know when it comes to building your CLEAF. TopherSmurf, how are we doing today, sir? It's good to see you.
Hey, doing good. Back at it again.
Yeah, back at it again. You already know. And again, on behalf of Tophers myself, we want to apologize one more time for not changing our clothes over the last 3 days here. I tell you guys, it's just, when you're a YouTuber, you just don't got the time to take showers like you normally do. So you just go with the flow, just, throw a little spray, a little,
Right.
What's it called? Deodorant? That's
yeah,
it.
that little middle school Axe body spray.
Axe body spray. There it is. There it is.
Good to go.
So again, guys, if you haven't got a chance to check it out already, I'm going to leave the links for the 2 videos up top that we already put there on the YouTube channel. But more importantly, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below for TopherSmurf channel, because if you guys have enjoyed this content, he got a lot more on his channel that you guys want to go ahead and check out here. So again, without further adu, let's go ahead and get into it. CLEAF, which is to be considered, I would say, probably the strongest at them all. There's been a lot of, back and forth about, who's the best and what who's broken, this and that here. And this is one of those units out there that not only does he have certain things in his kits, but he's just outrageously strong if you know how to min-max him. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about the weapons, sub-weapons, accessories. Go ahead and jump into the mix.
Sure thing. Yeah, CLEAF is definitely extremely strong. I think PvE, Orbia still takes the cake at this point. But yeah, in PvP, CLEAF definitely has a lot of versatility to him, which I think keeps him at the top of the PvP ladder. Definitely some Orbias and Kinas up there, but it's predominantly CLEAF's up there at the top. So yeah, CLEAF is the fun one. It's a little bit more difficult to build, I think, because he has to do so many things in order to be effective. So yeah, we can get into it. Definitely from that first video, guys, make sure to head back there and see how we break down the different attribute skills, the different active skills, and those sort of things, and the difference between those, so you guys know what you're reading, when you're reading those skill descriptions on your different weapons and accessories. So CLEAF, of course, we got Foggy, White Castle. Eventually, you guys get Naraka, Seal, and Twisted Marsh. Of course, we're talking about those things because you're going to get them very, very soon. The Foggy gear, you get attribute skill +2. That's your elements, right? You get element percentage damage based off the element. White Castle is your summoner skill. So yeah, if you want to pull that up, the White Castle is your summoner skills, and your summoner skills are those, you press one of the 3 skills and you do some sort of debuff or damage or some sort of attack. Those are extremely important. You use those a lot. A lot of people like the White Castle weapons for that specific reason. So you really can't go wrong with a White Castle weapon on most summoners. There's the Naraka ones, the Naraka weapons, which are the ultimate +2s. There's your Seal weapons, which you guys will get soon. That's +85 to your monster attack. And a little spoiler alert, I think that's going to be the best one for CLEAF. And then Twisted Marsh is your basic attack +2. So not bad, but not the best.
Right.
But yeah. So if we want to talk about, let's say, we'll start with PvE, because I know that's kind of the way we've been going.
Sure.
CLEAF PvE is, for a weapon, typically like White Castle. Because PvE tends to also mean, early and mid game, right? We want to get through all the dungeons. We want to get through all the content. We're typically looking at White Castle because those later 6-star weapons are going to give us +2 to our summoner skills. I don't know if you know how expensive it is to upgrade some of those skills, but most of us aren't going to have those skills leveled up to their maximum for quite a while, right? So we're definitely going to be getting the benefit of that White Castle +2 to our summoner skill. Eventually, very late game, we're going to have all those things maxed out, and White Castle weapons then don't give us any value because you can't go over that 10 cap. So that's really important to remember. So yes, it gives us a summoner +2, right, to our summoner active skill, but can't go over that 10 cap on the active skill. Maybe they change that in the future. I'm not sure, but as of right now, White Castle for that early, mid, and even into some late game. But then we kind of want to transition, and CLEAF's sort of final form, I think, is going to be that monster attack from Seal, those Seal weapons. Because while CLEAF does put out a decent amount of damage, he definitely needs a little bit of help from his monsters to put out the damage.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say, hopefully everybody's kind of cast with trending. Seal is #1. Okay. Yeah. Seal is #1.
Seal's
you got to focus
good.
on Seal. And then in addition to that, you'll notice that while there's going to be other, gear within the Seal thing, you obviously have to share the different types of material, as you guys can see right here, sitting here with like Satchel Wing, don't have enough of it. You kind of want to focus on the Seal attack weapons or the Seal weapons first, and then ultimately, as you get more resources, you can invest into other stuff down the road if it, definitely sees fit there. So sub weapons, though, a little bit different here than most, but let's go ahead and take a look at it here. Sub weapons, the shield. These good looking shields, by the way. They did a good job with this with these looks here. I'll tell you what, I like them.
Yeah, man. I'm currently on that seal shield right now. It's a good looking shield, so I really like it. I also like the Naraka shields. Those are pretty good looking too.
Yeah, sure. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So sub weapons, kind of a similar route to what we've talked about with Kino, is that summoner damage taken down from Foggy is honestly pretty good because that scales all the way into endgame, right? You can take that in anywhere at any point, and that's going to give you massive value to your CLEAF, right? So what is CLEAF's main job? Let's think about CLEAF. CLEAF is a tank. Now, the problem with that thinking, though, is that CLEAF also has to be a bruiser in order for him to be effective, right? So we're going to have to build him kind of with a little bit more damage, but we don't really have a lot of damage sort of options over here with the sub. We do, but it's not really a ton of benefit from some of those damage ones. That's why most people would agree CLEAF's, the sub weapon Foggy tends to be kind of the best one, right? We want to keep CLEAF alive. We want him doing that bruiser damage, much like much of your other bruiser monsters, right? We build them pretty tanky, but we give them a little bit of a attack too.
Okay. See, I was gonna say, I think I was looking there for Foggy, but I'm like, wait a minute, this is White Castle. I'm not looking at it. I'm got the right one pulled up.
Yeah, Soul Death Shield, decrease summoner damage taken. That's actually the number is minus 4.5%.
Gotcha. And
once
then
you actually get it.
One thing to point out that we didn't really point out here when it comes to the actual weapons here, or the between the Foggy and White Castle here, obviously summoner's damage taken is just straight damage here, but the attribute damage, are we talking about like elemental damage that we may be taking if they have the elemental advantage sources? How does that all work?
Right. So it's element damage that you would be taking attribute, right? So an attribute would be your element, right? That's another way of saying it. So yeah, element damage taking it. So while that it does seem nice, right? You take less damage. There's so many different elements going on here, right? So you're not getting the benefit all the time. So we tend to like to invest our resources into things that are going to give us a benefit at all times, wherever we're in. So that's just my take on it. I know there's a little bit of nuanced opinions here and there about different things, and I'm definitely down in the comments, guys. Let us know how you're building your different summoners. But my personal opinion and those of some of my other CLEAF buddies is summoners damage taken down from the Foggy.
And I was going to say, I mean, I think that's kind of like a cool little mechanic that maybe they can incorporate with specific dungeons that you want to build, gear, whatnot. But I feel like considering like the way that they're building these dungeons and how often they're putting them out here, it's almost like it costs too much to build these things. Like why would anyone want to build it for one specific element? If it's if you're going to be upgrading it down the road here. So yeah, hopefully they can figure out a reason to build it, because at the end of the day, while there is like one or two ways to go about building something, you kind of want to have a little diversity and whatnot here. You want to have a different reason to build each and every one. You don't want these CLEAFs to be unique here. So
of course.
Now the hardest part of it all, the part that we just absolutely love to talk about, the accessories. Without question, I think we could start this off by saying CLEAF is by far the hardest one to kind of narrow down, because he literally needs everything.
He does. Yep. Yeah. And I'm not even biased in that. I'm going to say, well, maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, he is 100%, in my opinion, a hard one to build, because not only does he have to survive and be tanky, much like Akina, but he also has to be able to put out that damage. So you're going to see some attack in here. You're going to see some crit damage, some crit rate as needed substats later on. But if we talk about his accessories, though, it's the same bonuses, every summoner, right? So we just kind of pick the set that works best for our summoner. Now, if you didn't know, summoner CLEAF he does damage scaling off of defense, right? Of course, attack, but then also he scales off of defense. So having more defense percent stats, and as well as defense stats anywhere, is going to be crucial to him being tanky, but also putting out some of that bruiser damage. It's kind of one of the ways that he scales helps him to do his job, which is to be tanky and to also put out that damage. So in that mindset, when we get down to the Foggy weapons down at the end, those 6-star weapons, you start getting that summoner defense 250. And most people would agree that in a general situation, right? We're not talking about PvP specific late game, general situation, having that bonus of increases defense 250 to your summoner is definitely a very useful stat. You could make the argument for the summoner HP, 3,400 HP towards from the White Castle gear. That works too, right? It's you're not going to go wrong with that. Where you might go wrong a little bit is your Naraka gear is summoner attack 185. Yeah, that sounds good, right? But we don't get as much value from a CLEAF out of the attack stat as we do a defense or an HP sort of stat, right? There is the seal stat, which is monster defense. Sure, can't really go wrong with that either. It's a lot of resources to put into a seal stuff there. And then lastly is Twisted Marsh. And we talked about Twisted Marsh. That's going to be your snake boss later on once you guys get it. Those are PvP. It's pretty much every summoner wants Twisted Marsh. The last greed earrings. That whole set, you want that for pretty much every summoner. So there's really not a lot of nuance or difference there. So PvE CLEAF, definitely getting more defense out of the foggy stuff. And then PvP CLEAF, of course, Twisted Marsh.
Gotcha. So early on in the game, as an up-and-coming player here, obviously you're going to be using the resources that you have, or the gear that you have to kind of put onto it. But as you move on, what was your take since you are a CLEAF main here? Did you go for the PvP route, or did you kind of go for the overall tanky build? And which one did you find more valuable for you?
Yeah, I 100% went the PvP route with definitely a more high damage build. A couple of my weapons have nearly 100% crit rate, and that's not necessarily on purpose. It's just kind of how the stats rolled. So I do put out a lot of damage, yes, but I am also a little bit on the swishier side. So that is a way to build your CLEAF, and that is a way that a lot of people build their CLEAF, is definitely on the more damage side. Now, of course, you got to stay tanky, right? You got to stay alive. So that's why I feel like it makes CLEAF really hard to build, because you do need so many things. So let's talk about sort of like some of the substats that we're looking for. Typically on our accessories, you get that flat defense right from the earrings. You can't change that. But then we get into the three that give us, different random main stats. Mm-hmm. Your necklace, I typically, crit damage. That's going to be my, if you need crit rate, you could do that too. But typically the crit damage, and hopefully get some crit rate in the substat. So that's kind of where that extra punch of damage is coming from. Mm-hmm. All that defense scaling damage that we're sort of building for. That's where that extra punch is going to come from. I believe it's the next one is not the necklace, but I think it's a bracelet. You get defense percent. That's probably the one you want to go for there. Defense percent, you're tankier. Hopefully you can cleanse off any defense breaks really quickly. But yeah, defense percent is great. You scale off of that defense, and you're tankier. And for that last one, the ring, you can kind of go whatever direction you need. You've got an HP percent ring. You could do that. You could do a defense percent ring. And you could also, an underrated stat is resistance, right? Resistance is while we like to joke about resistance, not being a thing, it definitely is an underrated stat for CLEAF, along with, of course, evasion, but we don't really have an evasion main stat.
Right. I was going to say resistance is definitely something that I kind of overlooked when I've seen other, other similar games like this with tanks and whatnot here. But ultimately, if you are PvP focused, you definitely can't neglect the resistance. It's going to be a crucial part of you staying alive and not getting controlled. So.
Yeah, if you're a CLEAF, the power of a defense break and an oblivion, right? And those two things are going to destroy CLEAF. So being able to have that extra resistance to be able to hopefully stop those debuffs from initially landing on you. Another reason why we're always bringing in immunity monsters, because we don't want that on us.
Right.
Otherwise, so yeah, if you can't get a defense break or any other sort of damage taken up sort of debuff on CLEAF, he's going to be around for a while, causing problems. So that's why resistance is, I think, a pretty important stat on CLEAF.
Gotcha. And again, I want to kind of preface this next topic, or this next question for you that was similar to the second video that we made here. As a person that does have a lot of experience with CLEAF and having the floor to go ahead and talk to people on various platforms and Discord and whatnot, I'm sure a lot of people have came at you with various questions and whatnot. What's that big common mistake? What's some of the things that people overlook generally when focusing on CLEAF?
Just sort of like scattering their resources. That's really the biggest mistakes that we can make in this game. Going different routes is one thing, but like putting resources into stuff that you're not going to use is really detrimental in this, especially when you're upgrading things to 6-star weapons and you upgrade the wrong stat, or you upgrade the wrong set, right? You're going for a foggy set, but then you just randomly upgrade a white castle one. Or you just randomly upgrade a Naraka one, which gives you that summoner attack, right? CLEAF is not really going to benefit from Naraka. So going up to 6-star from Naraka, late game, you're not going to really want that, right? You're going to want one of those other sets. So I've done that. That's a big mistake, is I've just sort of randomly put stuff up to 6-star just because, more stats, and bigger stuff. And it's probably the mistake. I needed to have a little bit more of a plan moving forward, how I wanted to build my CLEAF later on. Right. Maybe I could have been a little bit farther. Still doing okay.
Okay. And last but not least here, one of the things that we actually didn't get a chance to talk about when it comes to the first two videos that we make here, the light and dark weapons. Obviously, we're not going to have the opportunity that everybody, that people may possibly be able to get here, because the legendary weapons when it comes to light and dark are very, very far, few and far between here. So when it comes to you, regardless if we're talking about CLEAF, Orbi, or Kina, like what's your kind of take when it comes to the weapon, when it comes to light and dark gear? Do you just focus on the one that we can, obtain from the subjugation shop and get that? Or do you consider, looking at the exchange shop, maybe getting yourself like a foggy weapon, or, White Castle weapon that might be dark if you have the resources to do it and kind of invest in it, or just simply wait down the road and see if you get lucky?
Yeah.
What's your take?
I've always been a patient gamer for the most part. So, buying stuff from the exchange shop just really isn't in there for me. I'm typically just, I want to go in, I'm going to do my raids every day and hopefully eventually get a drop. I actually just in the last couple of days got my seal light weapon and my seal dark weapon, right? So I'm set.
Nice.
So I'm set with those, and I just need to take them up, to their last 6-star to awaken and start the refinement process on those. And that's my end game gear right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say congratulations.
Yeah, no, that was a big one for me. Finally, my dark staff and my light staff were 100% my weakest ones for the longest time, which stunk in PvP because light staff is really strong for CLEAF.
Yeah, good. I was gonna say that's another thing that we didn't even think about talking about here, like as far as the gear and certain weapons, which one is the one to kind of focus on, early to mid game. Obviously all the elements are going to come into play, but as a CLEAF user here, which one is the one that you found the most valuable for you as far as a weapon, in gear moving on? Because obviously they do all different things, whatnot. So
right. So I would say most people are going to lean towards the light staff for CLEAF. That invincibility buff, that third skill invincibility buff is so strong. Being able to put blind on certain monsters is really important too with the skill 1. So most people are going to say light. My light staff or my light weapon really wasn't great. So I stuck with my wind weapon. My wind weapon was my strongest weapon. I like the wind weapon a lot, mostly because I abuse Teor in PvP, and Teor gets additional damage from that defense buff from the wind staff. So I really liked wind staff. It was a relatively heavy water sort of meta for a while. You got Wusas, you got Bastets, you got the Amarses. It's definitely changed up a little bit, so I kind of play around between fire and wind a lot. But now that I've got those 2 seal weapons, give me a couple weeks, you're going to see TopherSmurf over here with some solid dark or light damage. So.
Yep. From zero to hero. Watch it. It's coming here. You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
100%.
Good deal. Well, yeah, I think that kind of concludes our 3-part miniseries talking about the 3 different summoners and the gear that you should be focused on, whether you're early, mid, or late game. Once again, TopherSmurf, want to take the time to kind of give you the floor here. Thank you again so much for your support. And is there any final words you want to share with the community with regards to our series that we provided for them?
Yeah, man, we've got a lot of great people in this community. So like, obviously I'm a CLEAF main. I had a decent, head on CLEAF and how to figure out how to build CLEAF. But I do want to shout out to Ruikin and Agent Smith and BotCheck over in Dior Guild on the east side of the US. They really helped me out, kind of walking me through some of the nuances with these different summoners. So they were able to really help me out with kind of having this discussion with you today. So shout out to them. But other than that, man, it's really just been the community. Obviously, Summoners War has been a great game. Summoners War IP, they're always going to put out good games, so we enjoy them. But at the end of the day, the community that they're building and the community that we're building is what I'm in it for.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that. All right, fam. So again, if you guys are watching here on YouTube, y'all know what to do.